Now, we talked in previous videos about the fact that domestic violence charges automatically come with a protection order that is issued. I get this question a lot though. What is the difference between a protection order in a DV case versus what we think of as a restraining order? So, being lawyers, we like to have acronyms for everything. You'll hear it called a CPO, a civil protection order, an MPO, a mandatory protection order. Some people will call it an RO, which is just a restraining order. But fundamentally, there are two key differences between criminal protection orders and civil protection orders. So we're going to use the example in this case of someone who is charged with domestic violence. Let's say that a couple gets into an incident of some kind and there's a scuffle. We're going to use a typical example of a husband and wife because that's normally what we see being charged here in Colorado Springs. We'll say that there's a husband and wife, they get into an argument, the husband shoves the wife and she gets injured. So that is an assault. In the criminal case, there will be a protection order issued against the husband, the defendant, for this crime of domestic violence assault. Now, that is a mandatory issuance. There is no way around it. Even if the named victim says that she doesn't want there to be a protection order, the protection order will remain no matter what. There are different ways that the protection order can be modified, which we go into in other videos. But for that criminal charge, the protection order remains as long as the case is open. And that includes as long as the case is open if you're on probation thereafter. So it extends for the entire time the case is open. Now, the difference is the criminal protection order is mandatory. It's issued, it happens, there's no way around it. There's also a civil protection order. So if this was not an amicable relationship and if the wife was very upset about this and wanted to further take out a protection order against her husband to last a lifetime, she could file for what's called a civil protection order. Now, the difference between the two is a civil protection order has to be actively sought by the person looking for protection under that protection order. It is not mandatorily issued like with a criminal charge. You do not have a domestic violence charge with a criminal protection order and a civil protection order is also added. Civil protection orders are completely separate. However, we see them lining up usually in domestic violence charges because someone will say, well, I have a protection order against this person for the duration of the case, but I want one for my life. So the key differences are, number one, a criminal protection order enters automatically on a domestic violence case. A civil protection order has to be actively sought for, applied for, and there's a hearing for that. A criminal protection order lasts for the duration of the criminal charged case. Once the case is done, so once someone's gone through, and let's say they've gone through probation and they've successfully gone through probation and into the case, the criminal protection order is no longer in effect. A civil protection order, on the other hand, lasts for as long as someone wants it to last. In other words, a civil protection order is generally thought of as being a lifetime protection. There are ways to get a civil protection order lifted, but usually the person who has asked for the protection order has to ask for it to be removed. And there are a couple of waiting periods of a number of years that you have to wait before that can even happen. The other thing to be aware of is whether you have a criminal protection order from a criminal case or a civil protection order, you can still be charged with a crime if you violate either of them. Under the current law here in 2022, a violation of a criminal protection order results in a Class 1 misdemeanor, which is the same level as an assault. So you will get another charge right up against you if you violate that criminal protection order. On a civil protection order, a violation of that civil protection order results in a Class 2 misdemeanor. So it's still a notch down, but it's still a criminal offense. Now, the other thing to know is someone can have both a criminal protection order and a civil protection order against them at the same time from the same incident from the same victim. We see it all the time. It doesn't do anything to the criminal case, but there are some things to consider where if you are being charged with a criminal charge and your victim is then trying to file a civil protection order against you, you have the right to defend yourself in both cases, but anything you say in one case can be used in the other case. So we'll dig into that a little bit more in another video, but it's very, very important to know there are two different kinds of protection orders that happen in domestic violence cases. The criminal mandatory protection order issues every single time there's a charge of domestic violence. The civil protection order has to be sought by the victim, and it can last for a lifetime rather than the duration of the case.